Hello everyone! This week we are going to talk about social construction of identity. So we are going to talk more about social self. Okay, so we have talked pretty much about the individual's taste and their self-concept as an individual, but a lot of you have mentioned on your essay that the describing and profiling someone or yourself is really difficult because you are very complex, a kind of being to be understood or described in just one page. All right, so this week and today we're gonna talk why it is so difficult, because we are not just an individual, we are born in this way, but we are also a social being, like social people are living in this society. I'm not saying that we should be cultured or we should be engaged in certain group as a social being, but I'm saying that we are socially constructed already. We are believe or not, we are constructed in some ways. So this is not my theory, and lots of social scientists are talking about the social being and the social self, because we are living in this society and we are cultured somehow already, and we cannot fully recognize that we are presented and we are like symbolized and we are presenting some culture, like culture, the society, the culture, the personality of the society. So culture, we are presenting the culture and certain languages. Okay, so language, we're going to talk about the language itself and the symbolic meaning, cultural meanings behind the language. Okay, so we're going to talk pretty much about, for this week we're going to talk about the implicit values. So that means you cannot say and you cannot even recognize that you are having certain values. That is called implicit value. So we're going to go further to understand better about the social meanings that has been embedded on your clothing, your language, and your behavior, and in several ways how we are presenting ourselves in this society. Okay, all right. Just as the American psychologist Henry Murray as described and defined the culture as something. Culture is the personality of society. We have talked pretty much about the personality as an individual, so we had done some personality tests, and your essays were also really great, and it was really deep. Please don't get much stress for your second assignment. You are doing really good already, okay? All right. So we're going to talk about the personality of society for this week, which is defined as culture by Henry Murray. And we're going to talk about how we are presenting ourselves. Okay, now we are not just presenting for others, we are presenting ourselves for us, to understand better about us. So sometimes we're standing in front of the mirror, or we're taking the picture of ourselves, and that is describing pretty much about our personality in some ways. So we're gonna learn how to step aside and being objective to understand better about yourself for this week. All right. Alright, for your first submission work, for your first assignment, I had made some comments personally. So could you please come and find my comments posted on the YSEC, alright? So if you can find my questions or suggestions which might not be relevant, in that case you can just ignore it, or you can be generous and kind to answer my questions, because there are no right answers. As you know, for this assignment, there are no right answers. It is all your work that you're going to continue for your individual project, okay? So in case of mine, I cannot understand your consumer as much as you may. So in that case, in case I'm asking irrelevant kind of questions to you, then in case that is absolutely okay if you just ignore my my views and my angles, and you can follow your path, and you can find another kind of catchy or another kind of ways to better understand about your consumer for your next assignment. Okay, all right, so please keep going. All of you are doing really, really good. Okay, all right, and I'd like to let you know that almost half of you have chosen yourself as your consumer, and another half of you have chosen your close friends and your twin sister, okay, and your sisters and the brothers and your close friend, your boyfriends, your girlfriends. A lot of you have chosen your girlfriends, and it was really interesting, yeah, to get to know better about your intimate others, okay, and some of you have chosen your taken your roles already as a designer of your consumer, your distinct consumer, and the stylist of your a consumer. That was a pretty like acute kind of ways to take your role by doing your individual projects, so you could take and some of you found your roles by taking a specific brands that your consumer likes, and the specific brands that's in your mind. Like you have chosen Nike, Adidas. One student chose Adidas. One student chose and other stories. Yeah, and you could take the role of the product development teams or the marketing teams or merchandising teams to give suggestions. Yeah, to give better suggestions for these brands to satisfy their key consumers. They're very enthusiastic and they're loyal kind of consumers of them, because they could get a chance to listen to the deep stories what's in their mind when they're thinking of their favorite brands like Nike, Adidas, like these brands that you have suggested. And you can also find my suggestions. I could ask you to go for the wardrobe study for your second assignment, or for the company shopping for your second assignment. I have made some suggestions. In that case you don't agree, you can just decide which one you're gonna choose. That is just my suggestion. Just you can come up with your ideas that you want to learn and you want to know more about. It is 100% depends on you. Okay, so you're gonna choose what you're gonna do for your next assignment. Thank you very much for your excellent essays. Okay, so our purpose of doing this individual project is to conduct an in-depth interview with your consumer or yourself, and make your consumer being talkative. Okay, to talk what they think about when you're asking certain questions. Then they're gonna be talkative to talk about how they think and what they think about. Okay, so this is the bottom up kind of step, like process, to make your questions which might be relevant for your respondents or yourself. Okay, so we have done so we're continuously doing consumer profiling to know about their personality and to know about their social influence and to know better about their wardrobe and their shopping patterns, the shopping characteristics, to observe, to know better about what might be the relevant issues or the ideas that your consumer will be talkative to let you know more about what they care regarding certain issues, or the clothing itself, or their style taste and their brand choice and their clothing selection as well. All right, so we are following this step. Okay, so by the next week, that's by next Tuesday, you don't have enough time to observe. So in case you need more time, just let me know. Okay, so you can just send me an email that I need 1 more week, I need 2 more weeks, but no later than 2 more weeks, because by the 8th week we have the question development due by the 8th week. So you're gonna come up with around 2 or 3 questions, might be. So for this week, we are gonna talk about the experiments, psychological experiments, which might be helpful in case they cannot fully understand about your questions, or in that case they cannot find your questions are relevant. In that case, we are gonna follow those steps to make some experiments to know better about what they care. All right, so your observation is due week 6, that is next week. But if you need more time, let me know. Absolutely okay, just let me know by email. You can text me, you can kakao talk me to me, and you can delay the deadlines of the observation by the 8th week. All right, and then we're gonna do some experiments just in case you cannot observe, you cannot make your questions. You're gonna go for the experiments process. But in case you are targeting yourself, or you know pretty much your consumer already, you are ready with making the questions for the interview, in that case you don't need this step, you don't need the experiment step, and you're gonna go right away to make some interview questions, like 2 or 3 big kind of questions, and you're gonna come up with some follow-up questions while doing the interviews. Okay, so I don't want well-structured questionnaire like interview. I don't like that. I want you to casually make some conversation like interview with your respondent, and you're gonna continue to develop your individual project based on very rich and very deep and very personal kind of interview, which could listen to and understand better about their opinions. All right, so our purpose is listening to what they want and what they need from the process of their clothing selection choices. All right, so our purpose is to find a way to better satisfy your consumers or yourself. So that is our purpose. So this is all the process to find how to solve these problems to make them to be even more satisfied. All right. Okay, for today's class, let me ask this one single question. How much do you think you are socially influenced? Okay, that's tricky kind of questions, and lots of students are answering like, I'm not that kind of person being easily influenced, because being influenced by others looks like selfless. That means you don't have your own identity or your strong kind of character, to describe you as somewhat differently thinking about the majority of others. So that is considered as most of you are thinking like that, and I myself are thinking like that. This is one essay what your senior students has submitted to me, and that was inspiring and very interesting. So I'd like to introduce this essay to you. I'm one of the person that wears what I want to wear to pretty much any place. Once I wore my pajama to a Halloween party so that I could go to sleep early when I get back home. Wow, okay. And in another case, I wore my shorts to go to school on a snowy day. Oh, okay. So from these cases, I felt myself as a person whose public clothes were pretty much same as my private clothes. So last week we had talked about Sophie Whitworth's public and private and the sacred selves, and we are having many multi kind of dimensions of ourselves to wear in all different ways in certain occasions or the places. But in case if you are not following those kind of rules, that means you're rebelling to certain dress codes or the social norms that is culturally structured kind of activities, kind of behavior. So our purpose for doing this project is to persuade, to let them admit that you are the person who are socially constructed somehow. That is not my theory. This is what many of social scientists are talking about. So we are going to talk more about for today's class, and for this week's class we're going to talk about the social concept theory, okay? The theory of social concepts that has been developed by many of social scientists and the scholars and in the field of psychology, sociologies, and we are going to talk about the cases that has been discovered by Dr. James, Dr. Cooley's theory, Dr. Mee's theory, and looking glass self theories, some very famous kind of theories to objectify ourselves, to understand the real me, the real us, by taking the views that has been studied for a long time by the social scientists, okay? And we're going to talk about what self-schema is, and for the next chapter we're going to continue to talk about what is context. Okay, what is social context, what is cultural context, what is immediate context and social control context, and broader meanings, what is concept, and how we're sensitive about this context. Okay, so we are going to talk about the theory of social self-monitoring. So it is not just about the social comparison about the self, because not really healthy to compare ourselves continuously with others. That is not considered as healthy. But the real thing is we are monitoring ourselves objectively, and to communicate ourselves by presenting ourselves as it is. The real you will be presented to communicate better with the others. That is what the social structure has been established to let everybody to be involved and to make certain kind of new rules in the structure that is eventually that could possibly change the whole rules of the society. Okay, so as an individual we have to vote on this coming Wednesday. As an individual we'd like to say something, and we'd like to show our opinions, to change what is missing in this society and what is problematic in this society, and we'd like to change, to be progressive, to say something, do something, behave in certain ways, to find another rules. Okay, so these theories are talking about that, and on the following chapter we're going to talk about self-enhancement mechanism. Last week we had talked about the Maslow's social hierarchy, the hierarchy of the needs. So on the top of the needs, the self-enhancement needs were located, and we could not fully describe what self-enhancement means. So it could be all differently perceived by the individuals, and we're going to discuss and talk more about this self-enhancement through social communication, social involvement. We're gonna see some examples that has been studied by this field. All right, so we are going to talk about social and influences on somebody's clothing selection, and the self-enhancement could be possibly done through choosing, because there are some people who are saying fashion is not very important to me. But in case if you have a chance to know more about the fashion, if you have chance to know more about the meanings of the clothing, and then you're you could possibly broaden your perspectives to see the meanings of the clues. All right? Okay. Okay, let me go ahead and explain a little bit about the symbolic self-completion theory. So you're gonna complete yourself to understand better about self. That is a theory that has been discovered and developed by Dr. George Herbert Mead, a famous American philosopher in 19th century, and he had established the theory of social self. Okay, so his premise in this theory is self is defined by the way the society responds to the individual. Because you're living in this society, you are behaving in certain ways, and it's not just about the others, but the society itself, the norms, the codes, and the regulations, and all the standards for making the judgment on somebody's behavior is talking to you constantly. So in that way, people like to behave somewhat differently to illustrate who they are by symbolic ways, so they are using some kind of symbols, including clothing. So they are using their own symbols to communicate better, because the people are having their strong needs to define who they are. So that is one thesis. You can find many of anti-thesis, but it is the thesis that Dr. Mead has described, and that is everybody's basic needs to know who you are, to know where you're from, to know where I should go. And that is the three big reason why people are living, and they are trying to find the answers from their life, why I'm born, and where should I go, what should I do for my future and for my life, meaningful life. So in his book, Mind, Self, and Society, self-definition is the keyword. People like to define who they are and to know better about them. And the symbols, which is describing who they are pretty much, is taking very important role to say and to share those symbols of self-definitional attainment. Okay, by showing in this way and that way to the public. That way they could possibly attain their job, like their task for the self-completion. So self-definition could be found by asking or trying on some symbolic materials, putting on some symbolic materials around you. Okay, so the symbol itself is not just about the tangible material thing in a non-material sense as somebody's artwork. If you're creating something, if you're writing a novel or anything, that is also considered as material thing. Okay, so your novel and your artwork on your plays and your including fashion or music, any creation is considered as a tangible kind of thing that you can have and store, and you can put meanings on that. So the self-completion and the symbolic products which is around you is quite connected, right? Like closely connected. So that is what Dr. Mead had talked about. So we are gonna go further, how we're gonna define ourselves by making communication with others. All right. Okay, how much we can tell about what we think. That means how much we can be honest to talk about what we think. Okay, so this is one experiment to test the consumers and the majorly housewives to discuss and to talk, being talkative, to talk about their biased or kind of their stereotyped kind of ideas they cannot tell to everybody, but they like to just hide and don't want to mention pretty much about. But in case they are taking this psychological experiment. That is not very ethical, but that is one way in the field of psychology to let your consumers to talk about what they think in case they don't want to talk about that issue pretty much. Okay, so that is psychological treatment and the experiment, which is called taking the projection method. Do you remember the projection is one typology of self-defense, your self-defense. You'd like to defend yourself by saying something that is your idea, but you're saying that that's someone else's idea, all right? Okay, so in case you'd like to eat kimbap, I really want to eat kimbap, but you don't want to mention that. So in case you're in a group, you'd like to just like respect others' opinions, so in case everybody else don't want to eat kimbap for this lunch, and in that case you'll just follow what they want. Okay, in that case you're gonna ask the person or the friend who is sitting next to you, oh, you must want to eat kimbap, and those kind of behavior is called like projection. You are just saying that this is your idea or your opinion, but you're saying that is someone else's opinion. Okay, so that is the frequently used kind of technique in the field of psychology to ask about their real ideas that has been hidden in their minds. Okay, so that is the experiment, which is called Hare's shopping list study. That was very famous a long time ago in 1950s. Dr. Hare conducted this study. That's why he labeled his name on this theory, like Hare's theory, Hare's shopping list study. And that was like self-reflection kind of like descriptions were going on, because they are asked to describe and to profile one consumer by just looking at the shopping list of one consumer. So for the half of the respondents, Dr. Hare showed the shopping list A, and for the other groups they showed Dr. Hare and the research team has shown the shopping list B, and the shopping list A and the shopping list B here is exactly identical, except the one single item. The shopping list A has the ground coffee, and the shopping list B has instant coffee. Okay, so the respondents were majorly housewives, and the housewives profiled and they use their imagination to describe who might be the person who are having this kind of a shopping list. So people's profile, their description about the consumer who might have shopping list A was considered as like a professional woman who is really caring about their families and the children, but they are not having enough time to do that. So they chose the paper towel and the diapers for just convenient reason to save their time. So that was the rationalization the respondents of this study has mentioned about the characteristics of the shopper A. But in case of shopper B, who has the instant coffee instead. That might be lazy kind of housewives, and oh, instant coffee. That's why they chose the PayPal Tower as well, and then they chose the diaper as well. So during those stages, you need to know better about the historical backgrounds of 1950s, because 1950s was the period right after the World War II, and during the World War II, lots of women practically they physically worked at the factory and in the office. They were like professional workers. They worked really hard during the harsh time in 30s and the 40s. But right after the World War II, the men came back from the battlefield and they took their position back, and women were sent back to home. Okay, so that's why they were used to work hard at the working place. So the professional mother and the professional housewife was considered as ideal, and that was like considered as the very appreciated kind of values that lots of women follow. So in the case, you can see on the pictures that was majorly presented on the fashion magazines and the major media during those stages, and they have presented the image of professional, like housewife. So that's why lots of people were like internalizing those kind of values, social values of those ages. And nowadays, if we are just viewing those shopping lists and instant coffee, what's the problem? So, but during those times, that instant coffee was firstly presented right after the World War II, because that was like quite relevantly used during the war time. So lots of people had many kind of negative or connotations that was related to the item like instant coffee. So what might be the result of this study has talked about is people are not in psychological like theoretical background. Lots of people don't want to talk about blame those lazy housewives in general, but in case they are talking like if that is somebody else's story, and if you don't know pretty much about who he is, and there is imaginative kind of scenarios that has been produced for this study. That's why people just want to say what they have been taught about, what's in their mind. They became so talkative about blaming this kind of women. Lazy kind of like descriptions were going on. So Dr. Hare has reported the motives exist, which are below the level of verbalization because they are socially unacceptable, or it is difficult to verbalize in general, or unrecognized. Okay, in that case, they could be presented by the stimuli kind of scenarios. In that case, they could find the hidden motives of the people to identify and access these consumer motivations in an indirect manner. Okay, let me introduce this very famous implicit association test. Okay, so that has been developed by the Harvard University in 1960s by the research team of psychology, and they have developed this tool to see the biased people's implicit and biased meaning projection on certain words. Okay, so they'd like to see how people are associating certain words as some other words implicitly. So that means they are not explicitly clearly say that they are certain kind of stereotypes or the biases to understand the connotations embedded on certain words, but that is getting too much criticism nowadays, but it is still relevant for the industry industries or there are lots of institutes are using this test as a personality test or social intelligence test, and in Korean like 인적성 test, and they are doing this kind of test to see that how competent you are to perceive the meanings of the words or the you follow the standards of the social standards of meanings that could be like shared implicitly by majority of the the people who are composing certain community or the society. Okay, so it is not considered not very ethical to know more about somebody's implicit kind of values that is not clearly shown to others, but it has been used to know deeper about one individuals and their personality to be like cultured and to become easily cultured or easily adaptable to certain kind of norms or the codes of certain institute. Okay, so that is what this test is measuring. This test is measuring how strongly a person unconsciously associate a certain things, certain categories with certain concepts or the ideas. All right. Okay, so here we have example of career and family, two categories. Okay, and you can implicitly associate indirectly you can associate these two words with some another words, like for example salary. Okay, you can see the salary, so you have to choose how if you're thinking the career is somehow more like associated with the word salary, and or you can choose family is more like associated with salary. The right answer is career. Okay, career is more associated with salary, but there could be some people who are saying that a career salary is not for my career. I'm earning money, I'm making money for my family. The salary, my salary, the level of the highness, the low level of my salary is somewhat associated with that is for my family. So if you choose family instead of career, in that case they're saying like red X will appears and you cannot go for the next step. Okay, so that is wrong answer. So you have to choose career for this test. So you can take this test if you're interested. You can you have the link below. You can go ahead and test to see how much you are like adaptable to the social norms. Okay, so all right, so that is simple kind of method that has been developed by the Harvard University, and it is still on their website. That you can put your left finger on the key button of your keyboard and the E button, E key, and your right finger on the I key, and you can choose career, family, career, family, while you're facing many different words which is associated with these two categories. And so you can find the word like children, you can click on family and then right, and then those kind of system. So what is the problem of the criticism made on this kind of test, like personality test and cultured like engagement test is talking about is saying that if you can choose both categories, if you can choose like career instead of family, you cannot go on for the next step. That means you're gonna take your time to think about that is tricky one. And if you cannot just click on the right answer, you cannot find the right answer right away. In that case, you are thinking in different ways. They're counting the moments, how many seconds you're spending on each question. Okay, so they can see how adaptable you are, how strongly you are rebelling to certain kind of like psychological implicit association that has been made and recommended by the society. All right, let's see more examples. Now we have pairs of categories, which is even trickier. We have the category of male or career and female or family. Okay, we cannot choose a male or career, but that is one combination set that we cannot choose. So they have like categories of male career and female family, and we have the questions like parents and the salary. Okay, so if you see the word like this, the question parents, you have to select female family. Okay, so oh, what? Okay, so that is the right answer. Female family, that is the right answer, and male career is wrong answer. You can see I have clicked on the male and career, male career, parents. Okay, career as a parent. So that is wrong kind of answer. Okay, so you cannot go on for the next step. For the next question, you can see the salary for family, salary for career. You have to choose male career for the salary. That is the right answer. So they're counting how much time you spent, and if you have chosen that correctly or incorrectly, and that is all counted to see that how much you're adaptable to living, to become competent living in this society, right? And this one is even trickier. Okay, so you can see the words pair of these categories of black men and black patient and the bad and the white patient as good, and they paired these kind of words that is also pretty much criticized and considered as problematic for doing this kind of test to check somebody's bias and stereotypes and the level of their engagement in the social system, and that is very problematic. But they are doing this research to show the statistics of the all respondents who have participated to take this test and how much time they have spent, how quickly they could decide which one to choose. All right, so that was called the implicit association kind of test, okay, which is also known as IAT, very frequently used until now, right? So what you're going to do is we're going to expand our the spectrum of reality. What is real? What is socially real? Because in a social science, the reality itself doesn't exist. Okay, so what the majority of the people believe that is real, that is considered real. So lots of exceptional cases who are clicking on opposite side and get the red X's. In that case, many people will be having kind of those kind of categories, and the pairings are that is problematic. I refuse to decide. In that case, we can change the social structure, the social construct that has been developed, and could be changed. So the social reality could be expanded. We have lots of theory, and we have discussed several theories, but why we have so many theories? Because there are so many theories describing the social phenomena in different ways. That way we can expand our views to see the world and see what is real and what should be considered real. Okay, so for the next class, we're going to continue to talk about what is social constructionism and how the reality could be reconstructed socially by the people, and the symbolic meaning that has been presented by the people living in this society, and how the meanings has been changed throughout the history. Okay, so for the next class, we're going to continue to talk more about social self, social value, and social constructivism that has been presented by this specific example of costume players, and how the symbolic meanings has been changed, and we have are going to talk more about the cases of struggles to maintain costume play engagement and how the faces of costume play has been changed, because that is telling pretty much about the practices and the values and the attitudes that we have in certain context. Okay, all right, so that is very long kind of article that is you're reading for this next class, but you don't have to read word by word, just skim through it because that is really long. So I'm gonna summarize and explain more about this article by applying the theories that we're gonna discuss more on the next class. All right, okay, thank you so much. See you on the next video.